I never thought I'd be the kind of person who believed in soulmates. That whole concept always seemed like something out of romance novels, you know? The idea that there's just one person out there who fits perfectly with you, who understands you on some cosmic level. I thought it was beautiful, sure, but not real. Not something that actually happened to regular people like me. And then I met Owen, and suddenly every cynical thought I'd ever had about love just evaporated like morning fog. It started the way a lot of things do these days, completely ordinary and unremarkable. I was working at this tech startup downtown, one of those places with exposed brick walls and too much cold brew coffee, where everyone's always talking about disrupting something or other. I'd been there about 6 months doing web development, keeping my head down, trying to figure out what I actually wanted from my life. I was 26 and feeling like I should have more figured out by then, you know? Like everyone else had received some manual for adulthood that I'd somehow missed. Owen joined our team on a Tuesday in September. I remember because I'd spilled coffee on my favourite shirt that morning and was having one of those days where everything felt slightly off. Our manager brought him around for introductions, and I looked up from my screen to see this guy with dark curly hair and these incredibly expressive brown eyes that seemed to notice everything. He was wearing a navy sweater that looked soft enough to live in, and when he smiled at me during the introduction, something in my chest did this weird flip that I tried to ignore. He took the desk diagonal from mine, close enough that I could see him in my peripheral vision when I was working. I told myself I wasn't watching him, wasn't noticing the way he'd run his fingers through his hair when he was concentrating, or how he'd tap his pen against his desk when he was thinking through a problem. I told myself a lot of things in those first few weeks. The thing about falling for someone when you work together is that you can't avoid them. Every day there he was. We'd end up in the same meetings, grab lunch with the same group of co-workers, stay late working on the same projects. And slowly, without me really meaning for it to happen, Owen became part of my daily routine in a way that felt both comfortable and terrifying. Our first real conversation happened about 2 weeks after he started. I was staying late, stuck on this particularly frustrating bug in my code, the kind that makes you question every decision you've ever made as a developer. Everyone else had gone home, and I was seriously considering just burning my laptop and starting a new career as a dog walker or something equally far removed from technology. Then I heard Owen's voice from across the office. "Hey, you okay over there?" You've been staring at that screen for like 20 minutes without moving. I looked up, surprised to find him still there. "I didn't even know you were here," I said. "Yeah, I'm just trying to figure out why this function won't do what I want it to do." Pretty sure it's mocking me at this point. He laughed, and it was this warm, genuine sound that made the fluorescent-lit office feel less depressing. "Want another pair of eyes on it? Sometimes it helps to have someone else look." I should have said no, should have maintained professional distance. But instead I heard myself saying sure, and then he was pulling his chair over to my desk, close enough that I could smell his cologne, something subtle and woodsy. He leaned in to look at my screen, and I became hyper-aware of how close his shoulder was to mine, how I could feel the warmth radiating from him. We spent the next hour working through the problem together, and it turned out Owen wasn't just good at his job, he was brilliant. He'd see connections I'd missed, ask questions that made me think about the code in entirely different ways. But more than that, he was funny and self-deprecating and easy to talk to. When we finally solved the bug, we both cheered like we'd won something significant, and he high-fived me with this huge grin on his face. After that, staying late together became kind of our thing. Not every night, but often enough that I started looking forward to those quiet evening hours when it was just the two of us and the hum of the office air conditioning. We'd work on our respective projects, but we'd also talk, really talk, about everything and nothing. He told me about growing up in Portland, about his complicated relationship with his dad, about how he'd always felt like he was searching for something but wasn't quite sure what. I told him things I hadn't told anyone else, about my own family, about feeling lost, about the fear that I was wasting my potential doing work that didn't really matter. There was this one night, maybe a month after he'd started, when we'd ordered Thai food to the office because we were both working on a deadline. We were sitting on the floor in the break room, eating pad thai straight from the containers, and Owen was telling me this story about accidentally adopting a cat in college. The cat had just shown up at his apartment one day and refused to leave, and Owen had tried to find its owner but eventually gave up and accepted his fate as a cat person. The way he told it, with all these little details and voices for the different people involved, had me laughing so hard I could barely breathe. And then he looked at me with this soft expression and said, I'm really glad I took this job, you know. I wasn't sure about moving here, but this feels right. You feel right." The words hung in the air between us, loaded with meaning that neither of us seemed ready to acknowledge. I felt my heart start racing, felt that familiar mix of hope and fear that comes with realizing someone might feel the same way you do. But I just smiled and said, "I'm glad you're here too." Looking back, I think that was the moment I knew that what I felt for Owen wasn't just friendship or attraction, but something deeper and more significant. I was falling in love with him, and it was terrifying and exhilarating in equal measure. The weeks that followed were this strange dance of almost moments and unspoken feelings. We'd grab coffee together every morning, and our hands would brush when we reached for our cups, and neither of us would acknowledge the electricity of that brief contact. We'd work late together, and sometimes I'd catch him watching me with this look I couldn't quite decipher. Something tender and uncertain. During team meetings, we'd share glances across the table, private jokes and observations communicated in raised eyebrows and subtle smiles. I started noticing everything about him. The way he'd bite his lower lip when he was nervous, how he'd always offer to share whatever snack he'd brought, even if it was clearly his favourite. The fact that he remembered small details from conversations we'd had weeks before, how he'd light up when talking about things he was passionate about, his whole face becoming more animated. My co-workers definitely noticed something. My friend Jasper cornered me in the kitchen one day and said, "So, you and Owen, what's the story there?" "There's no story," I said. "Probably too quickly. We're just friends. We work together." Jasper gave me this knowing look. Right. Friends. Friends who stare at each other like you're both trying to memorize each other's faces. Friends who basically have your own private language at this point. Sure. I wanted to argue, but what could I say? That I was trying desperately not to fall for someone I saw every single day. That I was terrified of ruining a friendship that had become one of the most important parts of my life. That I didn't even know if Owen was interested in men, let alone interested in me specifically. The thing about feelings is that you can't logic your way out of them. Believe me, I tried. I'd lie in bed at night and list all the reasons why pursuing anything with Owen was a bad idea. We worked together. Office romances were messy. I didn't want to make things awkward. I wasn't even sure what I wanted from life, let alone a relationship. But then I'd see him the next morning, and he'd smile at me over his coffee cup, and every rational argument I'd made would just dissolve. The shift happened on a Friday night in November. The company was having this thing at a bar downtown, one of those forced fun team-building events that everyone complains about but secretly kind of enjoys. I almost didn't go because I'd had a long week and my bed was calling to me. But Owen texted me saying he'd just arrived and asking where I was, and suddenly I was pulling on a jacket and heading out the door. The bar was crowded and loud, filled with people from work and the general Friday night crowd. I found Owen near the back, talking to a few people from the design team. When he saw me, his whole face lit up in a way that made my stomach flip. He excused himself and came over, pulling me into a quick hug that lasted just a second longer than a casual greeting. "You made it," he said, and I could hear genuine happiness in his voice. I was worried you'd bail. We got drinks and found a slightly quieter corner where we could actually hear each other talk. The conversation flowed easily like it always did with us, jumping from work gossip to movies we'd seen recently to philosophical questions about whether hot dogs were sandwiches. At some point, someone turned up the music, and people started dancing in the small cleared space near the jukebox. Owen watched them with this wistful expression. "I love this song," he said. "It was playing in the background during one of the best nights of my life." "Yeah? What happened that night?" He took a sip of his drink, considering. "I was at this party in college, and I'd just come out to my friends earlier that week. I was terrified they'd react badly, that everything would change, but they were amazing about it, completely supportive. And that night, we were all at this party, and this song came on, and I just felt this overwhelming sense of relief and happiness, like I could finally be myself, you know? My heart was pounding. He'd just come out to me, casually and naturally, and I was trying to play it cool while internally screaming. "That sounds amazing," I managed to say. "Your friends sound great." "They are. I'm lucky." He paused, then added, "It took me a long time to get comfortable with who I am. Sometimes I still struggle with it. But being here, being somewhere I can be open, it helps." I understood what he was saying, the vulnerability behind the words. "I'm glad you can be yourself here," I said. For what it's worth, I think who you are is pretty incredible." He looked at me then, really looked at me, and something in his expression shifted. The noise of the bar seemed to fade away, and it was just us in that moment, everything unsaid suddenly feeling very present. "Thanks," he said softly. "That means a lot coming from you." The moment was interrupted by Jasper appearing with more drinks, but something had changed between us. For the rest of the night, there was this new awareness, this acknowledgement of possibilities. When we left the bar together around midnight, Owen offered to share a ride with me since we lived in the same direction. In the back of the car, our hands rested on the seat between us, not quite touching, but close enough that I could feel the potential of it. When we got to my building, I hesitated before getting out. "Do you want to come up?" I asked. "I have that documentary we were talking about queued up. We could watch it if you're not too tired." "I'd love that," he said, and there was something in his voice, a nervousness that matched my own. My apartment was small and probably messier than it should have been, but Owen didn't seem to notice or care. He settled onto my couch like he'd been there 100 times before, and I started the documentary, though I don't think either of us paid much attention to it. We sat close together, our shoulders touching, and I was acutely aware of every point of contact between us. About halfway through, Owen shifted to get more comfortable, and somehow we ended up with his head resting against my shoulder. I held my breath, afraid to move, afraid to break whatever spell we were under. His hair was soft against my neck, and I could feel his breathing, steady and calm. "Is this okay?" he asked quietly. "Yeah," I said, my voice coming out rougher than I intended. "This is really okay." We stayed like that for a while, watching the documentary without really watching it. Then Owen lifted his head and turned to look at me, and we were suddenly face to face, close enough that I could count the flecks of gold in his brown eyes. "I need to tell you something," he said. "I've been trying to figure out how to say this for weeks now, and I keep chickening out. But I think if I don't say it now, I never will." My heart was racing so fast I thought it might burst out of my chest. "Okay," I said. "I'm listening." "I like you," he said simply. "Like, really like you. More than friends like you. I know we work together, and that makes it complicated, and I don't want to make things weird between us, but I also can't keep pretending I don't feel this way. You're the first person I think about when I wake up and the last person I think about before I fall asleep, and when something good happens, you're who I want to tell. I just needed you to know." The words hung in the air between us, brave and vulnerable and everything I'd been feeling but hadn't had the courage to say. I could have played it safe, could have given some non-committal response that protected both of us from potential hurt. But looking at Owen, seeing the fear and hope mixed in his expression, I knew this was one of those moments that could change everything. "I like you too," I said. "I've liked you since basically the day you started, and it's been driving me crazy trying to figure out if you felt the same way. I was so scared of ruining our friendship, but the truth is, you've become so much more than a friend to me." The smile that spread across his face was like watching the sun rise. "Really?" he asked, and I could hear the relief in his voice. "Really," I confirmed. And then, because words suddenly didn't feel like enough, I closed the small distance between us and kissed him. It was soft and tentative at first, both of us testing this new territory. But then Owen's hand came up to cup my face, and the kiss deepened, becoming something more certain and real. When we finally pulled apart, we were both breathing hard, and Owen was looking at me like I was something precious. "I've wanted to do that for so long," he said. "Me too," I admitted. "So, what now?" "Now," he said, settling back against me. "We figure it out together. The next few months were the happiest of my life. Owen and I decided to keep our relationship quiet at work, at least initially, not because we were ashamed, but because we wanted to keep something just for us. We'd maintain professional distance in the office, but then I'd go home to find him waiting outside my building, and we'd spend our evenings wrapped up in each other, talking and laughing and learning each other in all the ways that mattered. Dating Owen was easy in a way I hadn't expected. There was no game playing, no trying to figure out hidden meanings in text messages. We communicated openly about what we wanted and needed, and when problems came up, we worked through them together. He met my friends, and I met his, and it felt natural, like pieces of a puzzle clicking into place. He was thoughtful in ways that constantly surprised me. He'd remember that I had a big presentation and send me an encouraging text right before. He'd pick up my favourite snacks when he went to the store. When I was stressed about a project deadline, he'd show up with dinner and help me work through the problem. And it wasn't one-sided. I found myself wanting to take care of him too, to be the person he could rely on. We had our first real fight about 3 months in, something stupid about whose turn it was to do dishes that escalated because we were both stressed about other things. I remember standing in my kitchen, both of us frustrated and talking over each other, and suddenly being terrified that this was it, that we'd ruined everything. But then Owen took a deep breath and said, "Can we start over? I don't want to fight with you about dishes. I'm sorry I snapped. I had a rough day, but that's not an excuse." And just like that, the tension deflated. We talked about what was really bothering us, about the pressures at work and the fears we'd been carrying. We learned that we could disagree and work through it, that one fight didn't mean the end of everything. If anything, it made us stronger. I started being able to picture a future with him. I'd catch myself thinking about trips we could take, about what it would be like to live together, about growing old with this person who understood me better than anyone ever had. It was scary and wonderful in equal measure, this feeling of building something real and lasting. Then everything changed on a random Tuesday in March. We were at my place, cooking dinner together, when Owen's phone rang. He glanced at the screen and his expression shifted, becoming serious. "It's my mum," he said. "I should take this." He stepped into the other room and I continued chopping vegetables, not thinking much of it, but when he came back 10 minutes later, his face was pale and his eyes were red. "Hey," I said, immediately concerned. "What's wrong?" He sat down heavily at my kitchen table. "My dad had a stroke," he said. "He's in the hospital in Portland. It's serious. I need to go home." "Of course," I said, moving to sit beside him, taking his hand. "When's your flight? I'll drive you to the airport." He shook his head. "It's not just a visit. My mum, she needs help. My dad's going to need months of rehabilitation, and she can't do it alone. My sister's there, but she has kids and a full-time job. I need to go back, at least for a while, maybe longer." The implications of what he was saying started to sink in. "How long is a while?" I asked. "I don't know," he said, and I could hear the anguish in his voice. "A few months, 6 months, maybe longer depending on how his recovery goes. I just know I have to be there. He's my dad, and despite everything complicated between us, I can't abandon him when he needs me." I understood. Of course I understood. Family was important, and Owen was the kind of person who showed up for the people he loved. But the selfish part of me was already calculating the distance, the time, wondering what this meant for us. "We'll figure it out," I said, trying to sound more confident than I felt. "We can do long distance. It's not ideal, but people do it all the time." Owen looked at me with such sadness. "I don't know if I can ask you to do that. I don't know how long I'll be gone. It's not fair to you to put your life on hold waiting for me." "I'm not putting my life on hold," I argued. "I'm choosing to be with you, wherever you are. We can video chat and I can visit and we'll make it work because what we have is worth fighting for." He squeezed my hand. "I love you," he said. "I don't think I've said that yet, but I do. I love you so much, and that's why this is so hard." "I love you too," I said, and felt tears starting to fall. "So we'll make it work." But even as I said it, I could see the doubt in his eyes. Owen left 2 days later. I helped him pack up his apartment, putting most of his stuff in storage since he didn't know when he'd be back. The night before his flight, he stayed at my place, and we held each other without sleeping much, trying to memorize the feeling of being together. At the airport, we stood in front of the security line, neither of us wanting to let go. "I'll call you when I land," he said, "and we'll video chat every day. We'll make this work." I nodded, not trusting myself to speak without breaking down completely. He kissed me one more time, soft and sweet and heartbreaking, and then he was gone, disappearing into the crowd of travellers. The first few weeks were hard but manageable. We texted constantly and video chatted every night. Owen told me about his dad's progress, about the challenges of being back home, about how strange it felt to be in his childhood bedroom again. I told him about work, about the hole his absence had left in the office, about how empty my apartment felt without him. But slowly things started to shift. The time difference made scheduling calls difficult. Owen was exhausted from spending days at the hospital and taking care of his parents. Our conversations became shorter, more focused on logistics than on the emotional connection we'd shared. I could feel him pulling away, not because he wanted to, but because he was drowning in responsibilities and didn't have the energy for much else. I tried to be understanding. I tried to be supportive without being demanding, but I was struggling too, missing him constantly, feeling the absence of him in everything I did. Work felt meaningless without him there. My apartment felt too quiet. I'd catch myself starting to text him about something funny that happened, and then remembering that he was dealing with serious family stuff and probably didn't need to hear about my trivial daily moments. 2 months after he left, Owen called me late at night. His time. I could tell immediately that something was wrong from his voice. "We need to talk," he said, and those 4 words made my stomach drop. "Okay," I said, sitting down on my couch, bracing myself. "This isn't working," he said, and I could hear that he'd been crying. "I can't do this to you anymore. You deserve someone who can be there for you, who can build a life with you. I'm stuck here, and I don't know when or if I'll be able to leave. My dad's progress is slower than we hoped, and my mum's struggling, and I can't abandon them. But I also can't ask you to wait indefinitely for a future that might never happen." "Don't do this," I said, my voice breaking. "We can figure it out. I don't need you to have all the answers right now. I just need you." "You say that now, but what about in 6 months? A year? You should be dating someone who can actually take you to dinner, who can be there when you have a bad day, who can build a real life with you. I can't give you that right now, and I don't know when I will be able to. It's not fair to you." "Shouldn't I get to decide what's fair to me?" I asked, anger mixing with my desperation. "You're making this decision for both of us without actually asking me what I want." "Because I know you," he said softly. "You're loyal and caring, and you'd wait forever if I asked you to. But I love you too much to let you do that. You deserve better than someone who can only offer you phone calls and uncertainty." "You are what I want," I said, tears streaming down my face now. "I don't want better. I want you." There was a long silence on the other end of the line. "I want you too," he finally said. "But wanting isn't enough. Sometimes loving someone means letting them go." "Don't say that," I pleaded. "Please don't do this." "I'm sorry," he whispered. "I'm so sorry. But I think we both know this is the right thing, even if it doesn't feel like it right now. You're going to find someone who can give you everything you deserve, and you're going to be so happy. What if I don't want someone else? What if you're it for me? Then I'll have been incredibly lucky to have been loved by you," he said. "But I don't believe that. You have so much love to give, and you're going to find someone who can receive it properly, someone who can be there in all the ways I can't right now." We talked for another hour, both of us crying, both of us trying to memorize each other's voices. When we finally hung up, I felt like something essential had been ripped out of me. I called in sick to work the next day and the day after that, unable to face the office where we'd met, where we'd fallen in love. The weeks that followed were some of the darkest of my life. I went through the motions of living, but everything felt muted and grey. My friends tried to help, taking me out and trying to distract me, but I couldn't shake the feeling that I'd lost something irreplaceable. I'd lie awake at night, replaying our last conversation, wondering if there was something I could have said that would have changed his mind. I was angry at him for making the decision to end things without really giving me a choice. I was angry at myself for not fighting harder. I was angry at the universe for putting someone so perfect for me in my life, and then taking him away. But mostly, I was just heartbroken. 3 months passed, then 6. I eventually stopped checking my phone every 5 minutes hoping for a message from him. I stopped seeing his face in every crowd. I started dating again, going on apps and meeting people, trying to move forward like he'd wanted me to. But every date felt wrong. Everyone I met was compared to Owen and found lacking, which wasn't fair to them or to me. I went out with a guy named Tyler who was objectively great. He was handsome and successful and funny, and he seemed genuinely interested in me. We went on 3 dates, and on the 3rd one he kissed me goodnight outside my building. It was a perfectly nice kiss, but I felt nothing. No spark, no excitement, no sense of connection. Just the overwhelming feeling that he wasn't Owen. "I'm sorry," I told him. "You're wonderful, but I don't think I'm ready for this. I'm still getting over someone." "The someone from work?" he asked. "Your friends mentioned him." "Yeah," I admitted. I thought I was past it, but apparently not. Tyler was understanding about it, which somehow made it worse. I went upstairs to my empty apartment and finally let myself admit what I'd been trying to deny for months. Owen had been right. Not about me finding someone better, but about the fact that long distance with an indefinite timeline wouldn't have worked. We would have grown resentful and distant, and the relationship would have died slowly instead of the quick, clean break he'd given us. He'd loved me enough to let me go, even though it had clearly hurt him as much as it hurt me. But that didn't make it easier. It didn't fill the Owen-shaped hole in my life or make me miss him any less. I was sitting at a coffee shop on a Saturday morning about 8 months after Owen had left, working on a freelance project and trying not to think about how this used to be our coffee shop, when someone sat down across from me. I looked up, ready to tell them the seat was taken, and froze. It was Owen. He looked different, thinner, with shadows under his eyes that suggested he hadn't been sleeping well. But he was still unmistakably him, still the person I'd loved and lost. "Hi," he said softly. "Hi," I managed to get out, my heart pounding. "What are you doing here?" "I came back," he said. "My dad's doing much better. He's in outpatient therapy now and has a good support system. My mum's adjusted. They don't need me there anymore." "That's great," I said, meaning it. "I'm glad he's okay." Owen nodded, looking down at his hands. "I've been back for a week. I got my old job back, actually. Jasper told me you've been doing some freelance work, but you're still around. I wasn't sure if you'd want to see me, but I had to try. I didn't know what to say. Part of me wanted to be angry at him for showing up like this, for disrupting the fragile peace I'd been building. But mostly, I just wanted to reach across the table and touch him, to confirm he was really here. "I'm sorry," he said, and his voice cracked. "I'm so sorry for how I handled everything. I thought I was doing the right thing, letting you go so you could move on. But I was wrong. I was scared and overwhelmed, and I made a decision based on fear instead of love. I convinced myself you'd be better off without me, but really I was just protecting myself from the pain of trying and possibly failing. I've spent the last 8 months missing you every single day. I'd see something funny and want to tell you about it. I'd have a good day and want to share it with you. I'd have a bad day and wish you were there to help me through it. I dated other people, trying to move on like I'd told you to do, but nobody was you. Nobody else understood me the way you did. Nobody else made me feel the way you made me feel." He looked up at me then, and I could see tears in his eyes. "I know I don't have any right to ask this after what I did, but I need to know. Is there any chance you could forgive me? Any chance we could try again? I can't promise it'll be perfect, but I can promise I'll never make the mistake of walking away from you again." I sat there, looking at him, feeling 8 months of pain and longing and anger and love all swirling together. The smart thing would probably be to protect myself, to say it was too late, that we'd missed our chance. But looking at Owen, seeing the vulnerability and hope in his expression, I realised something. He'd been right that sometimes loving someone means letting them go, but it also means fighting for them when you get a second chance. "I've missed you too," I said, and watched relief flood his face. "Every single day. And I'm not going to lie, you hurt me. Walking away the way you did, making that decision for both of us, it hurt." "I know," he said, "and I'll spend as long as it takes making it up to you if you'll let me." "I'm not the same person I was 8 months ago," I continued. "I've learned to be okay on my own. I figured some things out about what I want and need. If we do this again, it has to be different. We have to be partners who make decisions together, who communicate even when it's hard." "That's what I want too," he said. "I've learned some things too. About not running when things get difficult, about trusting that love can be strong enough to weather hard times, about being brave enough to fight for what matters." I reached across the table and took his hand, feeling the familiar warmth of his skin against mine. It felt like coming home. "Okay," I said, "let's try this again, but we're taking it slow. We're rebuilding from the ground up." The smile that spread across his face was worth every moment of pain I'd been through. "Whatever you need," he said. "I'm not going anywhere this time," and he didn't. We took it slow like I'd insisted, going on dates and remembering why we'd fallen for each other in the first place. But it was different this time, deeper and more intentional. We'd both grown from our time apart, learned things about ourselves and what we needed from a relationship. We communicated better, fought fairer, loved more openly. It wasn't always easy. There were moments when old fears would surface, when I'd worry he might leave again, or when he'd worry I hadn't really forgiven him. But we worked through those moments together, building trust back up brick by brick. Now, 2 years later, I'm sitting in our apartment, the one we moved into together 6 months ago. Owen's in the kitchen making dinner, singing off key to some song on the radio, and I'm working on my laptop, and it's so beautifully ordinary that sometimes I have to stop and appreciate it. He was wrong, you know, when he said I'd find someone better. There is no one better than Owen. But he was also right in a way he didn't intend. Letting me go, as painful as it was, gave us both the space to grow into people who are ready for the kind of love we have now. Sometimes you have to lose something to understand its true value. Sometimes you have to be apart to appreciate being together. I look up from my laptop to find Owen watching me from the kitchen doorway. That soft expression on his face that I've come to know means he's feeling particularly grateful, or in love, or both. "What?" I ask, smiling. "Nothing," he says. "Just thinking about how lucky I am, how close I came to losing this." "You didn't lose it," I remind him. "You came back." "Best decision I ever made," he says, coming over to kiss the top of my head. "Well, second best. First best was falling for you in the first place. It's cheesy and sentimental, and I love him for it." I pull him down for a proper kiss, tasting tomato sauce and happiness, and think about how far we've come. From co-workers to friends to lovers to heartbroken to this, to building a life together that feels solid and real and right. He let me go knowing I'd never find better, and he was absolutely right. But what he didn't know, what he learned by coming back, is that I didn't need to find better. I just needed to find my way back to him. And in the end, we both found our way back to each other, older and wiser and more certain than ever that this, us, is worth every moment of pain it took to get here. Love isn't always about holding on tight. Sometimes it's about letting go and trusting that if it's meant to be, you'll find your way back to each other. And sometimes, if you're very lucky, you do.